So many people are challenged by vulnerability. Why is this? If you feel like it's difficult for you to be vulnerable, know that you're not alone, and it's one of the biggest challenges of the human condition. Because to be vulnerable is to drop the strategy that the ego so badly wants to impose on all aspects of your life. To be vulnerable is not only to just be authentic, it's to stop trying to control the narrative that your brain is constantly exuding in order for you to come across in a certain way. The issue regarding vulnerability is very deeply rooted, and it's something existent in many people because we are taught from an early age to start living in a particular kind of a way, seeing that the persona that we express to the world around us needs to be defined by the characteristics that our conscious mind wants us to constantly embody. Which means that for as long as we try to actively strategize our way through life, portraying ourselves in a familiar way, choosing to say and express and believe and behave in ways that are predictable and comfortable for us, we are not able to be vulnerable. Because being vulnerable comes into direct contradiction with the need to be fully authentic. To be vulnerable is to remove the strategy and to just be. To be fully consistent from within and without. To feel like you don't need to try to be any kind of a person, which means abolishing the rigid structures of the ego and choosing to not mentally manage your way through life, but to actually emotionally and somatically become consistent with who you are at a core level. It's the only way to be in a kind of authentic state that allows you to truly live, not just to survive in a mode defined by your limited mind. The fear of vulnerability is experienced in so many different parts of life. Many people deal with anxiety, various phobias, limited ability to communicate and to express their truths, with a closed heart chakra, the inability to feel deeply and to fully submerge yourself in the realm of your inner world. These are all connected to the need to learn vulnerability, because really being vulnerable is an art of self-expression and self-knowledge. To be vulnerable is to know yourself and to trust yourself deeply enough that you can fully express the truth that you're experiencing at your core. Truth is a subjective quality within everyone and everything. Your personal truth is simply the state of maintaining integrity between your ego and your soul, expressing consistently what you feel within you and outside of you, allowing your true feelings to be expressed in every interaction with everyone and everything, where you don't have to become a different person in different interactions and settings, but rather you can fully trust in the fact that when you surrender to your true and authentic self, you can simply be consistent in all parts of your life. If you can be consistent, you can also be vulnerable with yourself deeply enough that you can eliminate the aspects of your life in which you feel a need to be inauthentic, like with the wrong kinds of people that don't understand you, or in situations that don't feel conducive to your growth and evolution. Whenever you are deeply vulnerable with yourself, you can feel the inconsistencies in the world around you when you feel a dissonant quality to your own being when you're surrounded by certain elements that are dissonant to you. When you feel in alignment with yourself, you're able to easily magnetize the right people, the right opportunities and situations that harmonize with your inner condition. This is also the key to effective manifestation. What many people don't realize is that manifestation is not all about mentally construing a reality that you want to experience. Because quite often we can manifest things that are not actually meant for us. They're simply things that we want our mind to entertain as a possibility that we think will bring us more happiness and contentment in life. Now, the challenge with manifesting from the mental state is that you're just in a limited way drawing in possibilities that you want to have entertain your ego. You're magnetizing things that you believe will support your experience of more success, happiness, and abundance. But these are all things that just lead to an exalted nature of the self, or the egoic mind, which is never satisfied by what is, and just wants to manifest more to feel better about its limited sense of self. When, however, you are vulnerable with yourself, something magical happens. Because you can start to look beyond the layers of the ego and its attachments, its egoic desires, limitations, and all the beliefs that went into the creation of your superficial self to explore the deeper aspects of your being. Only by being vulnerable with yourself can you peer behind the veil of your conscious mind to understand what really goes into the making of your identity. Who are you really at your core? And why are you maybe afraid of being vulnerable with other people and in different real-world situations if you don't feel an understanding of who you are at your core? Being vulnerable is something that needs to be learned. It's an ability that we often are not taught because quite often we circumvent the need to be vulnerable because we feel more comfortable fitting into the world around us with a personified version of who we are. Vulnerability is often disowned at a very early age, when we encounter pain through the experience and expression of our authentic self. This can look a little bit like this. If a child is fully vulnerable with their emotions and expresses a certain need or desire to a parent or somebody important in their lives, and that need is shunted, and their parent or caregiver deprives them of the validation and acknowledgement of their deeper desire, the ability to be vulnerable slowly starts to close, like a door closing the part of the self that is able to freely communicate that innermost truth. After the culmination of many of these moments in which your desires and needs are not met, you start to feel like being vulnerable presents as a risk for pain. You start to feel like being vulnerable will not be met with approval from other people, so you stop being vulnerable with other people, and more importantly, with yourself. You can disown the experience of vulnerability completely by simply learning to suppress your feelings, desires, and authentic truths. You can disown the need for vulnerability by feeling like you're more content simply being the version of yourself that is created by your mind. Like you're mentally, from moment to moment, holographically rendering a version of yourself that is filled with certain thoughts, expectations, beliefs, and behavioral patterns that you believe will serve you in the world. This can get to such an extreme degree that you quite literally forget what you feel, experience, and want deeply down at your core. This obviously poses a lot of challenges when it comes to experiencing contentment and fulfillment in life. Because even though you can try to disown your authentic feelings, expectations, and desires, you're never going to feel content with life and with yourself unless you merge again with the state of your authentic truths. Authenticity can be disowned through the adaptation of the ego, but it's not something that can be fully eliminated. What's going to happen if you try to fragment your consciousness and stop being vulnerable with yourself is you can develop this acuity of dealing with the world around you in a very skilled way, becoming the person you think that you need to be happy in life. But deep down, you're always going to be met with this dissonant quality. You're always going to feel like there is some challenge, either in personal relationships, in people understanding you, or in feeling like you're truly at peace within yourself if you're not able to voice the authentic truths that your soul is experiencing. If you're not vulnerable, some of the possible effects could include feeling totally misunderstood and unacknowledged by significant others in your life, feeling like friendships feel kind of false, you're maybe an overgiver or a people pleaser. You may feel like you are drawing in narcissistic people or people who just aren't equipped to handle your emotions. Or maybe that you're in situations in which your needs and expectations just aren't met, because all these situations are mirroring your own inability to honor and respect your needs. Remember that nobody in this matrix experience of your own creation is going to be able to honor your needs and intentions unless you first are able to embody your own. Unless you can accept what you're truly experiencing at your core and bring out your truths to the surface, nobody else can really meet you at the level where you are. Because as you're falsifying yourself, superficially speaking, you're allowing the entry of more falsity into your world. By choosing not to be vulnerable, you're choosing to express a mistruth about who you are at your core. You are essentially lying to yourself in such a way that you are creatively manufacturing a reality in which you're only half of your true self. You are splitting your true self from your persona, and that leads to different kind of issues in the 3D world, manifesting more reasons for you to really unite from within. So how can you break this loop of the lack of vulnerability and truly come close to your soul? To begin doing this process, think about where in your life are you currently harboring a negative emotion, a feeling of discomfort, or any kind of guilt, shame, fear, or repressed feelings, which are manifesting more discomfort in the world around you. Where are certain patterns expressed that are caused by the inability for you to vocalize your truths? This may come through in an inability to express your real feelings, to be totally honest and authentic with yourself and other people. Or maybe this can even be about self-care and the amount of attention you provide yourself to nurture your genuine desires, dreams, feelings, and needs. Unless you can be vulnerable enough to first identify the things that are important for you, you will never be able to feel like these needs can even be met. Because first and foremost, you must set the conscious intention to be vulnerable and to allow whatever emanates from that state of vulnerability to become the acceptance point in your life. I'll repeat that. Unless you can first realize that you must be vulnerable, you can never really realize what it takes to keep experiencing that vulnerability. Unless you can first fully own the need to understand and deeply meet all of your needs, you will never be able to even realize what you must be accepting about yourself to experience more understanding, empathy, and love through the real-world interactions around you. When you start being more vulnerable, you might experience a difficulty in connecting with some people in your life. You might feel more challenged by certain things that start to feel like impediments after you start lifting your ego's ability to control. Another way to look at vulnerability is taking off the mask of who you are not in order to totally experience the deeper qualities of your being. That means that if you're used to suppressing or hiding certain parts of yourself, you start surrendering simply to the state of what you feel at your core. You stop trying to falsify yourself. You stop living with a certain agenda. You stop looking deeply into the future and thinking that you must hide what you're currently experiencing in order to get yourself to a certain point in time. Instead, you choose to look at life in the here and now and to see fully through all of your own filters. By choosing to see everything that you haven't been looking at in the past, you choose to own the vulnerable state of your existence. And through that, you might start to pivot in different interesting ways in your life. You might start to feel like by being vulnerable, you must choose a new path. You must choose to harbor new opportunities to keep being vulnerable, which means potentially changing certain dynamics, expressing to people how you really think about them, or what you feel you deserve in a relationship or a friendship. It might mean choosing to change work or to change certain aspects of your life, which will feel more uncomfortable when you choose to be vulnerable with yourself. When you are vulnerable, you also become a vehicle for truth, which means that other people might start to hear things coming through you which dismantle their own egoic programming. You may be afraid of being vulnerable potentially because you're not sure of the effect that your truth will have on other people's lives. You might feel like it's dangerous to be truthful because how might people perceive you? Maybe you'll be judged or criticized for sharing such a blatant truth with other people. But remember this, when you choose to be vulnerable, if certain relationships fade, friendships fall away, or situations in your life change, that is all happening for the better, to allow you to sink into a deeper level of alignment with your own soul. If when you are vulnerable, certain people reject you, turn their backs, or even betray you for choosing to embody the truth, know that those shifts were meant to happen. Because you evolving into the most vulnerable and honest version of yourself is ultimately you choosing to release the illusions of comfort and complacency in the 3D world and choosing to side more with a degree of truth and freedom that allows you to simply be. When you can choose to be vulnerable and go through this transition from falsity and illusion into truth and radical honesty, you're able to let go of every single thing in your life which serves as an unnecessary attachment. And resistance will naturally fade as you accept more and more of what you're feeling. Ultimately, the difficulty of being vulnerable stems from one thing alone, which is you disowned the need to be vulnerable when you found it dangerous to feel what you feel and to be who you are. When the experience of your truth and your authenticity became something dangerous to your mind, you stopped being vulnerable because you felt that it wasn't worth it on some deep subconscious level. You felt that in order to be vulnerable, you would have to give up certain things in your experience, which might feel more uncomfortable than not. But in retrospect, look at all those times when you weren't vulnerable, when you weren't authentic, and think of the implications. Start showing your own ego the truth that its defensive mechanisms, its choosing to falsify yourself in order to manifest things out of a lack of vulnerability, only leads to more illusion. It leads to the creation of different things in your life which serves as obstacles, eventually needing to be displaced by the need to be authentic. Choosing to be vulnerable and honest is the only way to live an authentic life, which means it is the only way that you can really find yourself and find the different areas in your life that must be harmonized with you to experience joy, peace, and bliss. In order to realize your vulnerability, you must learn to know yourself. You must learn to feel deeply and decide with your own heart and soul to allow your mind to surrender to this feeling of true inner coherence. And if you can do that, then you will never be challenged by the need to be vulnerable. Rather, seeing every single moment and experience in life as an opportunity to be ever more vulnerable, experiencing the truth of your soul as the gateway to experiencing more alignment in every area of your life.